I'd like us to begin this morning by truly asking each of you to look around the hall. 5 years ago, we had the idea that in addition to all of the important legislative work taking place and the coalitions we were part of, that there should be an advocacy day just focused on women and girls and the many important pieces of legislation. This year is the first year that we had to actually close registration because we sold out. Over these 5 years, we've had many legislative successes because you're in the building today. The legislators already have fact sheets. They already know which bills are pending. What they don't know is how important these bills are to women and men and girls and boys across the Commonwealth. And what you are uniquely positioned to do is to share that information and that passion of personal experience with them. Not just to share the facts, which are important, but to share what you've experienced and how you feel about it and what it means to your community. When we used to gather together, you might recall that you sat down with whomever you came with, wherever you chose, but now we have enough people from all across the 351 cities and towns that we sit by region, every region in the state. Sometimes people think of women and girls as an interest group. But let me remind you to remind them that we are the majority in every community across the Commonwealth. We aren't an interest group. We are the whole ballgame. And when it comes to women in Massachusetts, here's a few stats to know. We're the most educated population of women across the entire United States. And regardless of your age or your level of degrees or where you live or what was the catalyst for you coming today, remember that each of you is an expert. You are an expert because you live in Massachusetts, you have a personal experience and something to say. Many of you have come here today planning to be part of a group, but planning on saying nothing in the legislative meeting. And that's okay. You're welcome to come and participate in whatever way feels most comfortable. But I and all of my sister commissioners absolutely know that you have information that could not only help women in general, but if you think it and you've experienced and you know it, there's another woman who thinks it and knows it and has experienced it whose voice won't be here today. If you're not ready to speak on behalf of yourself, be ready to speak on behalf of her. Your voice counts, and we're asking. I want to share a bit about how does this all take place and happen. And I'd like to do that by asking each of the commissioners on the Mass Commission on the Status of Women to rise, along with each of the regional commissioners to rise. These women, Lauren Scribby, Linda Cavioli, Carolina Avaneda, Joanne McCrae, Becca Glynn, Chris Chaniel-Solkett, Mary Tuitt, Maureen Curley, Pam Pollock, Holly Titcomb, Chantel Bethia, Patricia Ho, Gloria Cabral, and Gwendolyn Vincent are all here today, having not only committed to being leaders and taking groups around today, but have helped ensure that we have a vibrant network of individuals across the Commonwealth who are participating and making sure women's voices are heard. Now let me tell you a little bit about this commission I keep saying. So the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women was created in 1998 by statute. There are 19 volunteer commissioners who serve as appointees of the Caucus of Women Legislators, the Senate President, the Governor, and the Speaker of the House. And these 19 women come together, and our job, non-compensated, our job as volunteers is to really listen to what women have to say, and we do that by holding hearings across the Commonwealth. We do 4 hearings, and we ensure that women's voices are raised. Now, on occasion we do them in Boston, but there are 351 cities and towns across the Commonwealth, and we intend to visit them all. We keep a big list and make sure that we do. What takes place here today is a legislative agenda that's advocated for, that's created by what women testify at these hearings. So that individuals come and they talk about their experience, they tell their stories, and they share with us not just what is working, but what isn't working. And more often than not, we're able to put a legislative agenda together to cause change from that landscape. One of the key things that we heard over and over was the importance of economic opportunity and how women are compensated. And women across the Commonwealth are concerned that their wage fully reflect their experience and what they bring to their jobs. With that in mind, we have been working very hard as a commission on pay equity and have been leading the Pay Equity Coalition here in Massachusetts. At this moment, I wanted to recognize several of the people who've been working hard on this and on all the other issues the Commission focuses on. I'd like us all to give a big round of applause to Jill Ashton, who's incredibly competent and dedicated, who's our director at the Commission. I think it's rare that there's an individual who comes in contact with the Commission that Jill hasn't spoken to and worked with personally. I'd also like to thank Kelly Lynch. Kelly, can you come out from behind the table and give a wave? And Jessica Galata, if you'll give a wave. Jessica is our intern, and all of this you see before you was her project. So we've been working on equal pay here in Massachusetts because we know that there are gender wage gaps. Most people say gap. There are gaps. Here in Massachusetts, we make roughly 82 cents on the dollar compared to a white male worker. When we look across the United States, what we know is on whole, women are making roughly 78% on that dollar. African American women are making 64 cents on that dollar. Native American women are making 60 cents on that dollar. And Latina women are making 53 cents. Now take that piece of information and map onto it that nearly half of school-aged children in the city of Boston grow up in single female head of households. When women are underpaid, families are underpaid. And when families are underpaid, that means less dollars on Main Street, which means businesses don't get the influx that they need, that the mom and pop and small business owners, that entrepreneurship slows. And what we know is that when women succeed, businesses succeed. We've been so pleased to have the partnership of Mayor Marty Walsh and his team working on these issues of pay equity. And here in this building, we have had incredible support for this work. And we are very close to the finish line, but not over it. Senator Karen Spilka, who's one of the co-chairs of the bill, did an incredible job in the Senate. We were able to get this legislation passed 37-0. Now, in case you aren't up here all the time, let me just share with you, 5 years ago, if we'd had a discussion on the likelihood of a pay equity bill passing the Senate 37-0, people would have been, how should I say, skeptical. But as you've seen across the United States, these issues have come to the forefront. And women are ready to have that discussion, and we have had the incredible partnership of CEOs from across the Commonwealth who understand that pay equity is good business. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this bill, and then I'm going to invite a number of my colleagues from the regional commissions to talk about subsequent pieces of legislation. Every piece of information we're talking about is in your packet. So I want you to rest assured, you don't need to take notes, you can if you want, but everything you're going to hear from myself and other commissioners gives you that information. And you'll have a group leader who can help. Does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone feel comfortable? Okay. And if you have additional questions, you can both ask whoever the group leader is at your table, but also the very competent people at the front desk, and we'll ensure that each of you knows what you're talking about and where you're going. Now, to that effect, I also want to say it is incredibly important that at the end, you come back here and turn in your notes from your meetings. It's dynamite that you're going to have good conversations. We want to know what the aide or the legislator said back to you. Because if we don't know, we don't have that information to then know where we should be pressing to go further and where we're all set. Now, what's incredible about this bill is just like the comparable worth bill that happened before, this ensures that equal work, particularly work that is segregated by gender, you can think of custodians, and you could think of lunchroom workers who are both lifting, working in a school setting, long days on their feet, highly different levels of compensation. So if you can indicate comparable work, people should be paid the same. And of course, when people are in the same job, doing the same work, same grade, same experience, people should be paid the same. So what this bill does beyond that is it ensures that no worker can be penalized for sharing their wage. Most of the time when people are not effectively compensated, they don't know. They don't know. So this enables that Carolina could share with me what she's making working in education, and I could share with her what I'm making in education, and neither of our employers has the right either to say that we can't or to penalize us after the fact for doing so. In addition, this bill gives something incredibly important to businesses. It says if you've done a wage audit, which means if you've looked at all of your employees by level of compensation and all of your employees by gender, and usually when people do these audits, they also look at race, sometimes region as well, that we will presume as a court system in Massachusetts that you are trying to solve the problem. You get a positive presumption. And this is something that we want because we want businesses to look. I believe that most people mean to get it right, but they don't always get it right because of implicit and explicit bias. We know that the broader the manager's discretion, the broader the pay gap. So what we want to do is to help people look at the facts and not rely on what seems kind of right. All of us have bias in us. Good, well-meaning people have bias. It's the way our minds work. It's how we sort information. But we do better when we look at the facts, and this bill helps employers look at the facts. And a last piece on that I want to note is one should remember that it's been the law since 1963 across the United States that you have to pay men and women equally. So if anybody says this is going to cost businesses a fortune, it only costs you something if you're already breaking the law. So when people remember that, they tend to pause and reflect before we say that. We do have some business leaders who are here today joining us to have these conversations. At the Northampton hearing, Mary Ann Winters from Safe Passage testified about the importance of the Equal Pay Act here in Massachusetts because her organization addresses the impact of violence against women. And she said something I think most of us know intuitively, which is if women don't have resources and can't support themselves, their ability to build a life free from violence is greatly diminished. And when women have the economic means to support themselves and their dependents, they have many more choices, and they keep our Commonwealth a much more stable and safe place. All of the work which we do in partnership and in concert. And we have two legislators that we wanted to recognize and thank today for their incredible work. The first is Representative Gloria Fox. Gloria's not here yet, but she will come down in a few minutes. She is one of the co-chairs of the Legislative Caucus. Lauren Scribby, who's a member of our commissioner, who's a member of one of our commissioners, is also, and I want to herald Lauren for all of her work day in and day out in the building, is also the staff member for the Caucus of Women Legislators. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Ellen Story. And Ellen, this is a particular pleasure for me. Ellen has worked with us day in and day out. Ellen has worked with us long before I was part of the us. She was elected to the Hampshire District in 1992. And Ellen, feel free to come right up. And when she was elected, she became the first woman ever to represent the city of Amherst. And Ellen's roots in making things just go way back. She was raised in Texas and received her undergraduate degree from UT. And as a student, she participated in demonstrations and ensured that that campus became desegregated. And she did the same working in the city of Austin. She moved to Amherst in 1972. She spent 17 years as part of the Family Planning Council of Western Mass. She received an honorary degree from UMass Amherst, and she holds a master's in education from Cambridge College. During her 12 terms in the House of Representatives, and for those of you who are unaware, that's 24 years. She has been one of the most significant advocates and architects of the social justice landscape that we have in Massachusetts. She has been a key architect and designer of what women's rights would look like here. And it is often said that one stands on the shoulders of giants when one is doing this type of work. And we are definitely on Ellen's shoulders today, so I hope she doesn't feel too weighted down by all of us being here. And I want to thank you for the partnership that you've shown the Commission and for your leadership and work. So thank you. Let me give you the mic.
Thank you, Victoria. And on behalf of the Caucus of Women Legislators, welcome to all of you. I'm so impressed to see that not everybody here has gray hair. There are lots of young people here, which is thrilling. I chatted with a group from Fall River earlier and asked why did they think it was important enough to come here, I mean, other than getting out of school for the day. And they said because they thought more women should be elected to office. I said, yes. For the past several years, a 6th grade class in Amherst, all the 6th grade classes in one school, have asked me to come and talk to them. And before I do, they send me letters talking about various important subjects. And this Friday is my day to talk to the 6th graders. And so I've seen all their letters and answered them, and a number of both boys and girls have talked about the pay equity issue. To 6th graders, it's just duh. They think That's not fair. That's just not fair. It's just so simple to them. And that's very heartening to me, that starting at 12 years old, they are already realizing this. Hopefully by the time that they are old enough to be working, they will be paid the same. One of the people that I am grateful to is Jim Rooney, who is a man, a white man, who is the head of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. And he's relatively new in that position. And he has made as one of his top priorities pay equity. And when the head of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce takes a stand, people notice that. So this is very powerful in terms of our cause. I also hope that you saw the business section in this Sunday's Boston Globe. They always have a whole section devoted to business. And this one, the whole portion was talking about the pay equity issue. And Shirley Lung, who is a columnist, has done wonderful writing about this. She's a business columnist. This is not just bleeding heart liberals who are talking about this. These are people in business who are saying this is good for business. And Victoria had a wonderful line that I've never heard before, saying if you worry that it will cost you too much to bring women up to what men are making for the same job, then you're breaking the law. What you're doing is illegal and has been illegal since 1963. So that's just a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. I think that this year is the year that we are finally going to pass this bill. And the reason that we are going to has to do with all of you here and raising your voices and your advocacy for this basic fairness issue to finally get addressed. So thank you very much for being here and for all of your hard work.
Thank you so much, Representative Story. I'd also like to recognize all the legislative offices that have representatives here in the room right now. Of course, Representative Story and Representative Tom Stanley, Representative Jerry Parsonella's office, Representative Alice Peisch's office, Representative Corey Atkins' office, Representative Jeffrey Sanchez's office, Representative Ann Margaret Ferrante's office, Representative Jay Kaufman's office, and Representative Denise Garlick's office. It is now my pleasure to welcome up my colleagues from the regional commissions, and I'd like to ask to join me on the podium Gwendolyn Van Sant of the Berkshire County Commission, Gloria Cabral of the Bristol County Commission, Pam Pollock of the Cape and Islands County Commission, Polly Titcomb of the Essex County Commission, and Chantal Bethia of the Worcester County Commission, and Patricia Ho of the Metro West Commission. And Gwendolyn, if you want to start us off.
Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be invited to speak this morning on Advocacy Day, advocating for 3 new regional commissions by testimony of the work of our Berkshire County Commission. Over the last 3 years, I've had the honor of serving as chair of the Berkshire County Commission, the longest-standing regional commission in Massachusetts. Originally, our commission made a singular, bold goal of reducing teen pregnancy in our county. We have been successful by reducing teen pregnancy by 50%, and also effectively leveraged this as a community issue carried forth by our local United Way, health professionals, and community organizations. Our current commission is active, engaged, and diverse. We are diverse in ethnicity, in age, in geographical residence, because I don't know if you know, but the Berkshires ranges from north to south over in the western corner. We're also diverse by profession. We have community health workers, nurses, councilwomen. We carry our mission throughout the county in our daily work. Many of us are the Women's Fund of Western Mass Lippy graduates, including myself, carrying the political advocacy and engagement in our corner. Most recently, our commission has been focused on lifting up the voices and experiences of our Berkshire County women to create equitable access and health, increase safety from violence, and to amplify the resources in our county while leveraging and advocating for effective policy both locally and in service to our mother commission here at the State House. We have discussed the experience of women incarcerated and separated from their Berkshire families with the closing of our local Berkshire prison. We have advocated for the anti-shackle law for women giving birth in prison. We've advocated with advocates for survivors and victims of human trafficking. Looking at the feminization of poverty in rural Western Mass and in the many ways it manifests across race, impoverished communities, and the impact it has on families and our elderly population has been a top priority for our commissioners. We all know, along with poverty and families doing without, comes startling domestic violence statistics. We truly believe a focus on equity and reducing disparities will reduce substance use and domestic violence, so we continue to advocate and support a focus on reducing women and children living in poverty in Western Mass. We partner with our philanthropic leaders, the cultural industry, nonprofit leaders, educational institutions, and the policymakers in our county. Our delegates make themselves available at all times to our county residents and to our commissioners. On the ground in the community, we hold open forums and share the status of women in Berkshire County on Facebook, our local TV stations, legislative breakfasts, and with our local community or city human rights commission, just to name a few targeted spaces. Also, through our collective social networking on our commission Facebook page, we educate on global and national women's issues and strides, as well as issues that our local delegates advocate for, to reinforce our interconnection of our Berkshire status of women and where we stand as a county, a state, and a nation. Our collective mission is to provide access to resources, services, and information, and have every woman's story heard and understood to leverage policy and advocacy. Every year we focus on a listening forum with young women, and we brought a table full from Berkshire County over here. And this year, in partnership with Miss Hall's school, we had girls speak on leadership and reach out to other Berkshire County girls at a separate standalone event, and also as a part of our legislative breakfast. Let's see. When we held our writing forum at Edith Wharton's historical home, The Mount, women from all walks of life came to share their personal story. The local leaders of the Diaper Project shared their story that now has taken form as policy to enhance literacy and family success by providing diapers to families in need. Other women shared the history and legacy of domestic violence and their stories as survivors, while others shared their struggle for equal pay in their professional fields. Every woman's story mattered. Every woman's story was heard. Whatever impacts one woman impacts us all. With that, I ask each of these 3 regional commissions that are proposed today have the opportunity to unite with other women across the Commonwealth, to reduce isolation and struggle by sharing story and empowering women to come together and advocate for policy for a better quality of life for all women and girls in the Commonwealth. These commissions bring the needs of women and their families to the forefront and advocate for and alongside women in their counties. In our case, at our legislative breakfast, we provide a space to educate funders, corporations, to connect with our legislators, to support our legislators in their advocacy work at the State House, and to reduce the isolation intrinsic in our rural Berkshires. At our most recent annual breakfast, an immigrant Muslim youth spoke of her experiences while making a call for young girls to speak out and take leadership for the needs in their communities. And an advocate for African American girls spoke for the need of pro-social emotional support to provide educational opportunities. As a whole, our commission focused most of our attention on the opioid epidemic and reducing the stigma for families and women in recovery. Each county, Hampshire, Franklin, and Hamden, deserve to have a vehicle focused on the rights of women, the success of women, and diminishing systemic barriers women and their families face. Many policies must be upgraded to the needs of the 21st century family, addressing the incredible disparities of health and access. Our work has just begun. It is time for us all to lean in today as we begin our day advocating for the women of the Commonwealth. The Regional Commission bills, an act establishing a Hampshire-Franklin Commission on the Status of Women, an act creating the Hamden Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, and an act establishing an Eastern Regional Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. These 3 bills would add to the 6 current regional commissions that exist in the rest of the Commonwealth, increasing coverage to almost most of the state. The regional commissions already in operation have members appointed by the Mass Commission and provide local input. They make it possible for the commission to hear from women across the state, expanding its reach and including more voices. The Women's Fund of Western Mass submitted a testimonial for the Northampton hearing, airing their support for the creation of the commissions in Hamden and Hampshire-Franklin. They spoke on the perceived gap in communications between Eastern and Western Massachusetts and how the commissions could work to bridge this gap. In addition, they identified the specific issues that plague this county, including a high rate of births to adolescent mothers in Hamden and Franklin. One woman stood up to testify that the female population in Hampshire County is the highest in the state at 53.4%, while they still lack representation. As a result, she notes that there are predatory loans that target female single heads of households, while men are given better rates and terms. Another woman testified at the Northampton hearing that they needed these new commissions, especially since rural poverty is a gendered issue. As I report these stories from our neighboring women, I want to close with this thought on Women's Advocacy Day, for us all to remember the power we share as women in all of our intersections of womanhood. Women living well above and well below the poverty line, women of African American heritage, women who are transgender, women who are of Latina heritage, women of the millennial generation, women of Muslim faith, women seeking refuge in our country, women with disabilities, women of European descent, women who identify as survivors or in recovery. All women, our voices and collective wisdom are needed. We should speak whenever and however we can, because more than ever, I am convinced women will save the world alongside our counterpart, at board tables, in the workplace, and right here at the State House. Please advocate strongly and hear the many benefits of adding these 3 regional commissions to connect women statewide. I close with a quote from Audre Lorde. I was going to die sooner or later, whether or not I had even spoken myself. My silences had not protected me. Your silences will not protect you. What are the words you do not yet have? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day and attempt to make your own until you will sicken and die of them, still in silence? We have been socialized to respect fear more than our need for language. I began to ask each time, what's the worst that could happen to me if I tell this truth? Unlike women in other countries, our breaking silence is unlikely to have us jailed, disappeared, or run off the road at night. Our speaking out will irritate some people, get us called bitchy or hypersensitive, and disrupt some dinner parties. And then our speaking out will permit other women to speak until laws are changed and lives are saved and the world is altered forever. Next time ask, what's the worst will happen? Then push yourself a little further than you dare. Once you dare to speak, people will yell at you, they will interrupt you, they will put you down and suggest it's personal, and the world won't end. And the speaking will get easier and easier, and you will find you have fallen in love with your own vision, which you may never have realized you had. And you will lose some friends and lovers and realize you don't miss them. And the new ones will find you and cherish you, and you will still flirt and paint your nails, dress up and party, because as I think Emma Goldman said, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution. And at last, you'll know with surpassing certainty that only one thing is more frightening than speaking your truth, and that is not speaking. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of the importance of regional commissions, each one of us different and remarkable in our own regard and action. Thank you.
Gwendolyn, thank you so much. I'm now going to ask the heads of our other regional commissions to come up, and each thing they're speaking on will be about a bill which you'll be talking about with legislators. Feel free to open your packets and also follow along on the bill sheets inside. Gloria Cabral.
I'll be talking about an act enabling family medical leave and temporary disability leave insurance. The bill establishes employee rights to family and medical leave or temporary disability leave in the event of a birth of a child, placement of a child with the employee up for adoption or foster care, the necessity of an employee to care for a family member with a serious health condition. In addition, the bill will protect the position, compensation, status, and benefits of the employee until they return from leave. As a result, this bill will fill crucial gaps in the federal legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pam Pollack, and she's going to speak on an act providing equitable coverage and disability insurance.
Thanks, Victoria. Why should women pay more for disability insurance, the same disability insurance benefits that are given? They're paying up to 60% more than men. I'm speaking to you today about an act providing for equitable coverage and disability policies, House 784. This bill intends to end sex discrimination in disability insurance policies. State-regulated disability insurance is classified by gender, and men and women are offered different premiums, with women paying upwards of 75% more than their male counterparts. The legislation would put disability insurance amongst the various other types of insurance that are legally barred from discriminating based on sex. Disability insurance is a contract which a policyholder pays premiums in exchange for payouts to replace lost income in the event of non-job related accident or illness. As a financial literacy educator, I speak with women all the time about the importance of planning for that accident for when you don't have income. So the added cost, knowing how important disability insurance is, knowing that we face pay equity issues, and now they're charging us more because we're women. Currently, state-regulated disability insurance is classified by sex, and filings at the Division of Insurance show different premiums for men and women with the same job classification. This is true across the board, regardless of insurance company, the age of the purchaser, the occupation class, the duration of benefits, whether long-term or short-term, and it shows that they did a case study, a 50-year-old non-smoking man with the same occupation paid $600 less a year than a woman in the same job. Why should women pay more for their disability insurance? We ask you that you go up and you represent this bill because it's a fairness question, and it is the only type of insurance in Massachusetts that's not regulated, that all other forms of insurance in Massachusetts are regulated, they cannot be gender-based. So it's time that we brought the disability insurance into the same categories as the rest of insurance. Thank you.
Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia Hull from the Metro West Commission. I'm here to talk about H82, an act providing for an investigation by a special interagency task force relative to gender-responsive programming for juvenile justice system-involved girls. Phew. It's called the Girls Bill. Justice-involved girls is a painfully American tale and a crisis of national proportion. Over the last 30 years, the fastest growing segment of the juvenile justice population is girls. In Massachusetts, we have over 5,000 girls who are in the system. There are approximately 100 girls committed to youth detention through DYS. We have over 1,000 girls who are on probation, and we have 4,000 girls with open cases at DCF. The 2015 report titled The Sexual Abuse to Prison Pipeline, I'll say that again, the Sexual Abuse to Prison Pipeline, a report that the Metro West Commission is studying and intends to act on, points out how 1 in 4 American girls will experience some form of sexual violence by the age of 18. And in a perverse twist of justice, many girls who experience sexual abuse are rooted into the juvenile justice system because of their victimization. Indeed, sexual abuse is one of the primary predictors of girls' entry into the juvenile justice system. The fact of the matter is the criminal justice system was designed for boys. Girls are different from boys, which necessitates gender-specific responses for them. H82 creates a special commission to collect data on the causes of girls' incarceration, as well as examining the way their issues are addressed in the juvenile justice system. Females are much more likely, girls within the juvenile justice system are much more likely than boys to experience post-traumatic stress disorder and suicidal behavior. The bill also calls for the implementation of gender-responsive programming and gender-aware training for relevant state agencies, in addition to regular reports on the status of girls within the system. The Metro West Commission, who has MCI Framingham within our jurisdiction, we know that in order to reach the goal of fewer incarcerated women, the work has to begin with the girls. Thank you.
Patricia, thanks so much. I wanted to invite Polly Titcomb up from Essex County Commission on the Status of Women, and she's going to talk about an act establishing the Pregnant Workers Fairness. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Polly Titcomb, and I'm the co-chair of the Essex County Commission. This past year, we focused a lot on legislative outreach and also held several informational interviews with individuals from nonprofits who work directly with women and families in Essex County. These interviews better informed us of some of the major barriers facing advancement of these women. Unsurprisingly, the biggest barrier is lack of economic opportunity due to many factors such as underemployment, low wages, inadequate access to childcare, and immigration status. We also learned that another major barrier to women's advancement is the lack of local resources available to immigrant women to ease the process of acculturation. And this prevents these women from identifying employment opportunities, building necessary social support system, and obtaining adequate access to health care. These barriers too often result in healthcare disparities. The women of Essex County and the Commonwealth at large need improved access to health care, as well as increased legislative protection. This is why it is critical for us to urge the legislature to pass the Massachusetts Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Over half of all pregnant women and new mothers in Massachusetts are in the labor force and earning income to support their families. This bill aims to prevent discrimination based on pregnancy by requiring employers to provide reasonable accommodations to employees and job interviewees who request them with conditions related to pregnancy or childbirth. Possible accommodations include frequent breaks, time off, special seating, and light duty. Using a personal example, I have a daughter who's now almost 2 years old, and when I was working last year, I requested an accommodation to pump breast milk. I was granted a private room with a door that locked that I could use on an as-needed basis. I was fortunate to work for a great state agency that sought to accommodate my need. But too many women do not receive these adequate accommodations from their employers for their needs, and this is why it's imperative that these reasonable accommodations become the legal right of all working women. Thank you to the Mass Commission, and we have a new website if you want to connect with us there. Thank you.
Thanks, Polly. It's my pleasure to invite up Chantel Bethia from the Worcester County Commission on the Status of Women, talking about an act relative to healthy youth.
The Act on Relative and Healthy Youth. This bill cares for age-appropriate and medical accurate sexual health education in any school and district that chooses to offer sexual education. It does not mandate that school teaches sex education. That decision remains in control of the individual communities. It promotes the benefits and abstinence and delay of sexual activity while also addressing methods to prevent unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. Further, it will establish a requirement of curriculum notification for parents and guardians of students receiving sexual health education in their native language. The Jane Doe Inc. shared a letter of testimony prior to the Boston hearing in which they stressed the importance of comprehensive and correct sexual education. As an organization dedicated to providing services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence, Jane Doe Inc. noted how education could give you young survivors the ability to talk about sexual violence, cultivating a culture of respect and safety. This act will give students the opportunity to learn how to make an educated and empowered choice about their personal health and relationships.
Thank you, Chantel, and all of our regional commissioners who've shared with us important information about the bills. Now it's time to go and do our legislative visits. After your legislative visits, come back here, turn in your sheets that you wrote information on to the table. We'll have lunch here, which is casual. People can get something to eat before you head out. For those of you who are members of the regional commissions, we have a brief meeting from 1:30 to 2:30. And for members of the Mass Commission on the Status of Women, we then have a meeting 2:30 to 3:30. And let me say, from all of us and from the women who are not here, thank you for spending your Tuesday raising your voices for what's important for women across the state. Thank you.